I reached for a rag and pulled the cast iron skillet from the smoldering embers at the edge of the campfire. The acrid stench of smoke mingled with the sizzling aroma of sausages, onions, and bell peppers, thick in the damp air. My stomach growled, a loud, feral rumble, demanding dinner after a long day riding fences. Almost done, I muttered to myself, flipping the sausages with a fork and sliding the skillet back toward the glowing coals. It was my first time out here in this god-forsaken place. The Blackwater swamp, a 50,000-acre cattle ranch swallowed by the murky wetlands and shadowed pine forests of Louisiana. I'd worked other ranches before, mostly in the dry, cracked plains of Central Florida. But last year I'd felt suffocated, craving a change. So I packed up and headed southwest, landing in this festering pit, where every breath carried the reek of decay. The weather here was colder than I'd expected, the air thick and clammy, clinging to my skin like a wet shroud. The landscape was warped, unnatural. Towering pines stabbed at the sky, their long shadows stretching like skeletal fingers clawing up from the earth. An hour past sundown, we just finished setting up camp on the forest edge. Nearby, the horses shuffled softly in the dark, nibbling grass at the ends of their tethers, their movements a faint whisper against the oppressive silence. Above, a billion stars glittered in a moonless, cloudless sky. The Milky Way slashed across it like a smear of pale blood on a black shroud. The chill deepened, seeping through my jacket. But after a sweltering day in the saddle, it felt sharp, almost alive. "You did good today, kid," Tommy rasped, his voice rough as wind scraping over the swamp. He was the oldest of us three, his weathered face flickering in the firelight, looking 100 years old, though he was probably no more than 60. His skin was dark and cracked, like the bark of a dead tree, carved by a lifetime under the merciless sun and the salty damp of this land. His eyes were perpetually squinted, as if fighting a glare that wasn't there, lost in the dark. But he smiled often, a crooked grin that softened the harsh lines of his face. "Hard to find a decent worker under 40 these days," he added. I dipped my head in thanks. "Appreciate it, Tommy." I glanced at Jonas, who just finished tending the horses and now sank into a collapsible nylon chair beside us with a faint groan. Tommy handed him a tin cup. I knew it held whiskey, and Jonas nodded in silent gratitude. Tall and lean, Jonas sported a bushy gray mustache and close-cropped hair beneath a battered cowboy hat. Every time I looked at him, I couldn't shake the feeling he'd stepped straight out of an old Western film. Even the revolver on his hip, an ancient wheel gun, screamed of a bygone era. He preferred it over the modern automatics the rest of us carried. "Yep. Good work, David," Jonas said, nodding my way and raising his cup slightly. "We're making solid time. Reckon we'll wrap this job up day after tomorrow, get you back to that pretty little wife of yours." He grinned, a flash of teeth in the firelight. We'd been out riding fences for days, though it felt like months. Another crew worked the southern line, but we were stuck with the northern border. Rocky, muddy, tangled with pines and swamp. I envied the southern team. Their flat, open terrain let them zip around in jeeps and sleep in their own beds each night. Up here, where the land dipped into bogs and twisted through dark woods, no vehicle could pass. We rode horses, just like the doomed souls who'd worked this cursed ground a century ago. I didn't mind too much. It was quiet, almost peaceful, a place where a man could think. Still, 6 months into marriage, every night away from Sophie stabbed at my chest. Maybe next time I'd get the southern gig? Maybe not. I stirred the peppers and onions in the skillet, making sure they didn't stick. There's something I don't get I said. Why'd we skip that stretch of fence today? The one running back into the woods. Wouldn't have taken long to check. For a split second, I caught Tommy's eyes dart to Jonas. A quick, sharp glance, like a warning carved in silence. You mean that low ground? The tree line we bypassed around noon? Jonas asked, his voice low and gravelly, like stones grinding under swamp water. That's Gravestand. We don't go in there. His words hung heavy, cold. It's swampy, treacherous. Cattle don't wander there anyway. Tommy nodded, staring into his cup, his gaze distant, drifting somewhere no one sane would follow. I pulled the skillet off the heat, setting it aside to cool. Yeah, but shouldn't we at least look? What if the fence is busted? I'd hate for Colton to find out we skipped a section. I'd known foremen like Colton before. Hard men who'd sooner spit on you than tolerate a shortcut. Jonas waved off my worry, fishing a cigarette from his breast pocket and lighting it with a smoldering twig. Colton knows we skip it every time. Hell, he's the one who told us to steer clear in the first place. He exhaled a plume of smoke, his eyes glinting in the fire's glow. Ever since that kid, he trailed off. Ricky, from Georgia, Tommy cut in, snapping his fingers as the memory clicked. Right, Ricky. Don't know why I keep forgetting that name. Jonas nodded. Yeah. Ever since Ricky went missing back in there, 2005 or 6, I reckon it's been off limits. Truth is, it was off limits even before that. He drained his cup, set it down beside his chair, and fell silent for a long moment, lost in thought. Then he nodded, almost to himself. I'm gonna tell you a story, David. So you don't get curious and wander where you shouldn't, like Ricky did. The first time I saw it, I was about your age, maybe a bit older. I've been working this ranch my whole life, but that was my first time riding the northern fences. Before then, I'd stuck to tending the herd or fixing gear. One day, the old boss, Trent Jackson, came to me. Said I'd be joining the next crew up north since old Nick Terry took sick and wasn't expected back in the saddle anytime soon. I was thrilled. New work, a chance to step up. Jonas lifted his cup, signaling Tommy for a refill. It was the third day out when we hit that stretch of fence. The one that vanishes into the dark pines. The two guys with me were green, and I guess no one had ever told them to steer clear. So when we reached it, we just followed the fence line into the shadows. It was a scorching day, midsummer. I couldn't wait to get out of the sun and into the shade. But when we crossed that tree line, it wasn't cool or refreshing. The air was stifling, wet, like stepping into a sealed shed on a July afternoon. All three of us felt it, that unease creeping up our spines. Even the horses balked, snorting and pulling at their reins like they smelled something foul. Tommy smirked. Always said horses were smarter than you. Jonas chuckled faintly, nodding. Guess you're right. Still, we pressed on, tracing the rusted barbed wire, checking for slack or breaks. Even then, I thought it was odd. The cattle never strayed into those woods. The ground around there's churned to hell from grazing even now. He shot me a tight, knowing smile. And we all know cows ain't exactly bright. How many times we've had to drag strays out of the eastern woods because they couldn't find their way back. But something kept them out of that tree line, something they could sense. That old fence runs half a mile or so into the forest, then curves back out. No idea who thought it was a good idea to string it up there. Probably one of the original Blackwater clan when they claimed this land. Anyway, the whole stretch was rotting. Neglected. Like no one had touched it in decades. Jim Tillman, our crew leader, jotted it down, Figured we'd be back in a few weeks to replace the damn thing. We had repair supplies, not enough for a full rebuild, so we kept going, eyes peeled for breaches. He paused, taking a drag from his cigarette, his gaze drifting far off. Bill spotted him first. He had the sharpest eyes. Scattered among the trees were these things. Little hanging trinkets made of sticks, string, and animal bones. Like those dumb dream catchers you see dangling from car mirrors, but different. Older. Real. These weren't tourist junk. They were ugly, menacing, like they meant something dark. Bill got jittery after that. He had Wichita blood, and I think it was screaming at him to turn back. But we'd already spent hours winding through the trees. No way we were going to slink back and let the foreman hear we chickened out over some creepy ornaments. We were armed, not about to be scared off by junk left by God knows who. The ground was marshy, soft. Horses struggled till it finally rose up, firming underfoot. By late afternoon, we decided to find a clearing, tie up the horses, and camp for the night. That's when Bill saw the shack. Jonas sipped his whiskey, his pale gray eyes gleaming in the firelight. At first, we didn't know what we were looking at. An old homesteader's shack, abandoned for generations, squatting in a decent-sized clearing with a trickling creek off to one side, like a faint, weeping sound. We figured it was as good a spot as any to rest. Bill went to gather firewood while Jim and I rigged a makeshift corral for the horses and cleared a fire pit. The sun was dipping low, drowning the woods in shadow, though a shred of light lingered in the sky. I started dishing out supper for Jonas and Tommy, almost on autopilot. I'd never seen Jonas so caught up in a memory, never heard him string so many words together. He was usually quiet, watchful, a man who spoke rarely but commanded attention when he did. We'd finished setting up. Back then, we just slept on bedrolls under the stars before all these fancy, lightweight tents. He went on. Bill still wasn't back with the wood. We figured he was struggling to find anything dry in all that damp, rotting mess. While we waited, Jim said we should check the shack before full dark, make sure no one was inside who'd cause trouble. I doubted it, but part of our job was keeping trespassers off Blackwater land, so I tagged along. We walked over, maybe 20 yards from our camp. I noticed what looked like a braided rope on the ground in front of the door, like it had once been stretched across the entrance till time and weather snapped it loose. It wasn't normal rope, too ornate, studded with strange beads and patterns that felt wrong. I wondered why anyone ties something like that around a crumbling shack, but I didn't dwell on it. When we got to the door, Jim reached to pull it open. That's when I saw the markings, weird symbols and writing carved across the wood spilling onto the walls on either side. Not English, not anything I'd ever seen. Jim said it looked Comanche, but I called bullshit. He wouldn't know Comanche from a snake bite. Hell, I wasn't even sure they had a written language. Light was fading fast, so we flicked on our flashlights. Without another word, Jim yanked at the door. Wouldn't budge till he threw his weight into it. He was a big bastard, and it flew open with a crack like a gunshot, like it had been barred from inside. Jonas paused, setting his untouched plate on the ground and taking another sip. His eyes drifted to the campfire's flickering flames, lost in the past. The second that door gave, I knew something was off. We both did. You could feel it, like the air before a storm, but worse. Wrong, like we didn't belong there. He locked eyes with me, his gaze piercing. Like we'd just fucked up. I started wondering if Jonas was messing with me, hazing the new guy. I glanced at Tommy. His eyes were locked on the fire, brow furrowed, lost in something grim. Jonas looked up at the stars, then continued. It's strange. I remember that moment like it was yesterday, burned into my skull. The air turned ice cold all at once, and everything went dead still, like the world was holding its breath, waiting. The shack was empty or close to it. In the middle of the dirt floor was a jagged black hole, maybe 3 feet wide. No telling how deep. We edged up to it, careful, shining our lights down. If it had a bottom, it was too far for us to see. Jim kicked a rock over the edge. We heard it clatter down the walls, echoing for ages before fading. Never hit bottom, though. Then we heard something else, scratching from deep in the dark, like claws on rock and dirt. Frantic, wild, hungry, lots of them. They were climbing up fast. Too damn fast. I don't know what kind of thing can scale a sheer pit like that, and I sure as hell didn't want to find out. I stepped back out the door, keeping my light on the hole, listening as that sound got closer. Jim didn't move. He stood there, frozen at the edge. Flashlight pointed down like he was hypnotized by something. My hand switched the light to my left, the right resting on my pistol, ready to draw. The scratching grew louder, more crazed, like someone clawing out of a coffin. I opened my mouth to yell at Jim, drag him out, when Bill's voice cut through from the campsite, asking what we were doing. I glanced back, saw him walking toward us, dusting his hands on his jeans after dropping a pile of firewood by the ring. He nodded at the shack, asked what we found, but I was already turning back to grab Jim, haul him out by the neck if I had to. That dread was swelling, screaming that something bad was coming. Right then there was this roar, like wind howling through the swamp. And something huge, dark and wet, exploded up from that hole. I can't tell you what it was. Can't even describe it. Maybe a man's mind shields itself from seeing things it's not meant to. Things that'd snap it like a twig. All I recall is this gleaming black mass bursting out, stinking like death itself. Legs. Dozens of them, like some hell-spawned centipede. A head? A face? Couldn't say. Next thing I knew, I was flat on my back, wind knocked out of me, head ringing. Jim screamed, pure terror, maybe pain. But it cut off fast, like a switch flipped. I'd never heard anything so awful. Sprawled there, dazed, gasping, I saw Bill a few steps off, eyes wide as saucers, mouth slack, staring at whatever had come up. His hands dangled limp, swaying like a puppet on invisible strings. By the time I scrambled up, yanking my pistol free, it was over. The thing was gone. Jim with it. The shack was empty again, save for that damn hole. Jonas tossed his cigarette butt into the fire and drained his cup. Tommy refilled it wordlessly, then offered the bottle to me. I took it with a nod. My God, Jonas, I breathed, my eyes darting to the darkness beyond the firelight at some half-heard sound. Probably just my mind playing tricks. This is a joke, right? You're screwing with the new guy? Tommy and Jonas shared a look, some silent exchange between old friends I couldn't read. Jonas took off his hat, ran a hand over his cropped hair, put it back on, and leaned forward, fixing me with a stare that cut to the bone. I wish to hell it was, son, he said, his voice dropping low. Pill was rooted to the spot, checked out. Nothing I said or did could snap him out of it. I had to wrestle him onto his horse and get us the hell out of there. No way I was staying near that hole or whatever was down in that dark another damn minute. We got back to the ranch house next day around noon. By then, Bill's hair was white, like someone had bleached it overnight. His eyes were clouded, just milky marbles in his skull. 28 years old, and he looked 100, like his soul had been sucked dry. Docs called it catatonia. Alive, but not there. If anything of him was left, it was cowering in some dark corner of his mind, praying not to be found. They locked him up in Rockdale, that asylum near Gilmer, till it shut down. From the moment we lost Jim, Bill never spoke again. Never even twitched at anyone around him. Only sound he made was at night, bolting up in bed, screaming blind into the dark, till the orderlies doped him up. 3 years later, they found him dead as dirt. Still sitting upright, eyes wide, mouth gaping, just like that day at the shack. I wasn't sure how much I bought it, but Jonas didn't seem like he was bullshitting. It felt real, like he was dredging up memories, not spinning a yarn. "What the hell was it?" I asked. "That thing from the hole?" Jonas shook his head. "No clue. The Cato tribe settled this area way back, but they've got tales of an older people, shunned, nameless, whispers of human sacrifices, pacts with the underworld, calling up elder gods to wipe out their foes. Maybe that's what this was. Some ancient thing they summoned. Maybe they reached too far, grabbed something they couldn't leash. Maybe not. All I know is we don't go into the trees at Gravestand."